We all make mistakes, and it's kind of a presetting we have as humans. But some of us make bigger mistakes than others. And because there's not a specific meter to measure the ethical or regret of the mistake, we're going to measure them in the only way we know how, money-wise. So today we've prepared for you a list with the top 10 most expensive mistakes in history, and they will make you feel way better for yours. Are you ready? Let's go. Number 1 is Ron Wayne's mistake. Who hasn't heard of the legendary Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the founders of Apple? If you haven't been living under a rock, you know them too. But did you know that back in the 70s when it all began, there was another founder? Probably not, and with good reason. The third founder was Ron Wayne, who actually was the one that wrote the Apple I manual and designed the logo. Because there were tensions between he and Steve Jobs in 1978, he decided to sell his 10% share in Apple for, are you ready? $800. No, we're not kidding. You heard it right. Do you know how much he would have if he'd kept his shares? $35 million. Surprisingly, he says he never regretted walking away. Do we believe him? Number 2 is Throne Luck. Lady Luck and this couple had apparently a huge karma fight. In 2010, a couple from Britain won the $147 million lottery with their ticket, but they never claimed it. Why? Because the husband had apparently thrown the ticket away by mistake. Now, we don't know if they're still married, but we can guess the fight they had after they figured out they could have changed their lives completely and become ultra-rich. Well, at least they didn't have to wonder if the lottery curse would make them lose their loved ones or end up completely broke, like many of the previous winners. Number 3, the most expensive typo. Proofreading is important. Every editor can tell you the same thing, but this story takes it to a whole new level. In 2005, stock for the company JCOM was listed at 610,000 shares for 1 yen each, when the company meant to share at 610,000 yen each. The brokerage firm that actually made the error was able to buy a lot of the shares back and recovered the stock's price, but it did cost them a lot to do so. In fact, it cost them the equivalent of $225 million. An expensive typo? Yeah. The most expensive typo in history? Yeah. It's the OCD editor in you laughing now. I would say yes. Number 4, that damned iceberg. My heart will go on. My money, on the other hand, will not. Titanic, the unsinkable ship, which, as we all know, wasn't that unsinkable after all. Now, while we're familiar with that tragedy, we might not be familiar with how much the sinking of the Titanic cost. Do you want to know? Well, want it or not, here it is. $168 million. Of course, that's nothing compared to the 1,517 people that lost their lives that day. But apparently guilt wasn't the only cost the company had to pay. Number 5. Don't break this one. Now, this one might not be one of the most expensive mistakes in history, but it's surely an expensive one. Plus, it's pretty funny. So it made it proudly to the list today. Do you remember the 2015 Quentin Tarantino movie, The Hateful Eight? Well, apparently one was more hateful than the others due to an expensive blooper. In a scene where Russell takes a guitar from Jason Lee and smashes it, he accidentally smashed a 150-year-old Martin instead of the balsa wood prop. The guitar was on loan from Martin Guitars and worth $40,000. Martin will no longer loan guitars from their collection for filming, unsurprisingly. Number 6. A bit too wide. If you grew up with a classic mom, then you had to suffer wearing clothes or shoes that were too big because you're going to grow into them. Well, apparently the train operators at SNCF grew up with mothers like that because when they ordered 2,000 new trains for their lines all throughout France and Paris, the trains were just a bit too wide to fit in the platforms. To correct the error, construction was needed to widen the platforms at over 1,000 train stations in France. To fix this huge, pun-intended mistake, it would cost them over $68.4 million. Number 7. Quite challenging. The date was set, everything was ready. The Space Shuttle Challenger was scheduled to take off January 28, 1986, on its last flight. But the frozen, unpredicted temperatures the night before caused the rubber parts in the rocket boosters to freeze. It might not sound like a huge problem, but it turned out to be a deadly malfunction. The frozen parts didn't seal the way they were supposed to. The Challenger exploded, and it killed all 7 astronauts on board. Apart from the cost of human lives, this mistake cost around $5.5 billion. Number 8. Think before you cheat. This is for all the women out there who have experienced cheating from their men. A tale of pure revenge. In 2009, Tiger Woods was everywhere on the news, but not because of a golfing achievement, not this time, but because of his extramarital affairs. Apart from his public image taking a huge hit, his wallet took a bigger one. His ex-wife managed to get a $750 million settlement on their divorce. Whew! Man! But it wasn't over for Woods. Because of the scandal, both Nike and Gatorade, which were his main sponsors, they dropped him. How much would he lose overall? $12 billion. Are we sorry for him? Well, that's up to you to decide. Number 9. Mercedes versus Chrysler, 1-0. The hope was there, the intentions were good, but it didn't go as planned. The story goes like this. Mercedes-Benz parent company Daimler-Benz merged with Chrysler in 1998, hoping they would make Daimler-Chrysler an international mega automobile legendary powerhouse that would dominate both Europe and the U.S., with branches in both continents. Even though Daimler-Benz paid $37 billion for Chrysler, unfortunately the deal didn't last because of differences. In the 2000s, the recession made Chrysler's sales fall drastically and pushed Daimler-Benz to be sold to Chrysler in 2007 for $7 billion. You want to know what it would cost now? $20 billion. Number 10. Chernobyl. Just like Titanic, Chernobyl is not known for the financial loss it cost, but for the cost of human lives, which is still unaccountable. Although the official death toll is 31, there's another 4,000 predicted deaths from radiation exposure. It was the worst and deadliest nuclear accident in history, and it happened on April 25, 1986. A drill simulating a power outage at Chernobyl led to uncontrolled reactions and a steam fire that burned for 9 days. It's been proven that the mistakes were completely preventable, which somehow makes the whole thing even worse. These preventable mistakes cost around $590 billion. Well, there you have it for today. These were the top 10 most expensive mistakes in history. Which one made you cringe the most and why? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget, like the video. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel for more amazing top 10s every week, it's time to do that. And we'll see you next time.
Oh no. So keep my mouth shut and not listen. My friend